in 1971, John Lennon had a hit single with a song called Imagine. And the message of the song was something like this: Imagine there's no heaven. Imagine there's no hell. Imagine there's no religion. And the message of the song concluded that in the absence of those things, the world would be one. The world would be at peace. We would all love each other. And isn't that a message which appeals to most everybody? And I guess that's why it was so popular, because we would want the world to be exactly like that. The problem is that it's based on a false premise. The premise is that if we got rid of those things, the world would be a much better place. The truth for the Christian is that we need God in our lives. We need heaven. We need religion in the sense of an active living Christianity, not a dry, boring religion. But we need those things, and when we have those things, then what we would experience is a Christian community which loves each other, which is joyful, and which cares and supports each other through the difficulties of life. Imagine, by John Lennon, 1971. Let's think about a child's imagination. I have very fond memories of when my granddaughter was growing up, where we would go into the kitchen and the kitchen would become a radio station. It would become a school hall, and we were presenting something to the assembled school children. It might become an accident scene requiring an emergency response. And none of that was planned, and we had no props. It was all just imagined by my granddaughter, in fact, and she was just telling me the part that I had to play. So I might be presenting a radio program. I might be the adult who was making sure the children in the make-believe audience were behaving themselves, and she would tell me, "Oh, I have been known to be the ambulance driver arriving, running from the hall into the kitchen with a wee-wah, wee-wah, wee-wah." A child's imagination is absolutely fascinating. What about our imagination as adults? Do we lose our imagination as we grow older? I don't think so. Let me just put three things to you. Imagine what might happen if we really believed in God's power to transform lives. Imagine what might happen if we learned to be channels of blessing to our fellow citizens wherever we meet them. Imagine what might happen if we created a Christian community where people were safe to be who they are and encouraged to become all that they can be. Perhaps we do well to ask God by His Spirit to extend our imagination on what might be possible. But the Bible, nevertheless, tells us that we have limited imagination. In Job chapter 37 and verse 5, we read, "God's voice is glorious in the thunder. We can't even imagine the greatness of His power." We believe in our minds that God is powerful, is all powerful. We may have experienced on occasions God's power working in our lives, but we can't imagine. It's beyond our capability. We can't imagine how great that power is. Or in Isaiah 55 and verse 8, we read, "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine." My ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. And finally, in the New Testament now, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 9, we read, "No mind has imagined what God has prepared for those who love him." We can't imagine what God has prepared for us who love and follow him. We have some insight into our ultimate destination in the book of Revelation, for example, but that's only limited. We cannot imagine what God has prepared for those who love him. But it's going to be great, even if we cannot imagine it. What about imagining the future? We are in most strange of circumstances, and we don't know what's going to happen. We could imagine and try and speculate as to when life returns to normal, if it ever does return to normal as defined by how we used to live life before coronavirus. But our imagination is limited. We could imagine what our church might become in the future and when. But the fact is that we don't know. It may be that we have to do church considerably differently because of social distancing, which the Chief Medical Officer is saying may well still be with us by the end of the year. So I want to conclude just by giving you a couple of verses. A verse from 10th chapter of Mark, verse 27. "Humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God, everything is possible." Those words of Jesus actually are recorded in 3 of the 4 Gospels. Those men who wrote them, inspired, we believe, by the Spirit of God, saw fit to record those words. We might look at the situation and think this is just impossible. But with God, everything is possible. And the other verse I want to leave you with is in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 12, where the people are saying, "We do not know what to do, but we are looking to you for help." And that applies to many of us in many situations. God, we don't know what to do, but we are looking to you for help. I hope those thoughts are helpful, and may God bless you in this coming week.